Friends, we can all see that many white bloggers have millions of followers. Please support me too, because my followers are still few. Black bloggers also deserve to be famous. Raised fist medium dark skin tone. My friends, let's unite and lift each other up. Please press subscribe button and like. The silence in Maya's small apartment was a heavy, suffocating thing. At 6 a.m., the digital clock on the wall mocked her with its glowing red numbers. Just 1 hour until she had to be at Lane Mansion, a palace of polished stone and cold perfection, and her world had just been upended by a single heartless text message. Daycare closed today. Emergency. Sorry for inconvenience. Inconvenience. The word was a slap in the face. It wasn't an inconvenience. It was a crisis. The twins, Eli and Noah, were just 2 years old, innocent and unaware of the sheer weight on their mother's shoulders. They sat on the floor, their pajamas rumpled, their giggles echoing as they pounded building blocks together. For them, life was a simple game. For Maya, a single mother since Daniel's car accident 2 years ago, it was a daily battle for survival. Rent was late, the fridge was bare, and the last of her money had gone to diapers. Losing her job was not an option. Her boss, Jacob Lane, was a legend whispered about in hushed tones. The billionaire was a man carved from ice, with a reputation for merciless precision. The stories were endless. A maid fired for a crooked fork, a cook dismissed for an extra pinch of salt. One mistake, and you're gone. And Maya was about to make the biggest one yet. "You're coming with me today," she whispered to her sons, the words a plea to a world that didn't care. She packed a diaper bag with snacks, bottles, and toys, dressing the boys in their cleanest clothes. Taking them to the mansion was strictly forbidden. Jacob hated noise. He hated anything that disrupted the immaculate order of his home. Maya's only hope was to hide them, just for one day. The taxi ride to the mansion was a blur of knotted anxiety. As the car passed through the towering iron gates, the house loomed before her, a fortress of wealth and cold grandeur. She clutched a stroller, her stomach a churning mess of nerves, and hurried down the servants' hallway to the laundry room, a small, forgotten space that smelled of soap and old wood. She set up a little play area, put on a cartoon, and kissed the boys' curly heads. "Stay quiet for Mama," she pleaded. For a while, her plan worked. She moved through the mansion like a ghost, her movements quick and precise. She dusted, polished, and arranged with flawless care, each task a desperate prayer. She would slip back to the laundry room, heart in her throat, only to find the boys still captivated by the cartoon, their soft giggles a secret she guarded with every breath. Then the floorboards above her creaked. The front door, a sound that should not exist. Jacob Lane was never home this early. The sharp, rhythmic echo of his shoes on the marble floor was a drumbeat of doom. No, 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 Maya thought, her heart a frantic hummingbird in her chest. She dropped her mop and ran, but she was too late. She reached the living room just as Jacob stepped inside, a shadow in a perfect black suit. His face was a mask of cold stone, his jaw tight. Then his gaze fell upon the scene before him. Eli and Noah had escaped the laundry room, their small bodies now the center of a chaotic symphony. They were surrounded by pots and lids from the kitchen, laughing as they beat them like drums. Jacob stopped. His face hardened, and Maya's world seemed to shrink to a single, terrifying point. She could already hear the words, "You're fired." "Mr. Lane, please," she began, her voice trembling. "I dash." But before she could finish, Eli dropped his lid and crawled toward the billionaire. The little boy's hand slapped against the marble floor, and he reached up, looking at Jacob with wide, innocent eyes. Then he said a single small word, "Duh." The room fell silent. Maya's heart seized. Jacob's eyes widened, his expression a complicated mix of shock and confusion. Instead of pushing the child away, he slowly, awkwardly crouched down. Eli's tiny hand wrapped around his finger, and then a sound echoed to the mansion that had never been heard before. Jacob Lane laughed. It was a low, surprised sound, as if it come from a place deep inside him he didn't know still existed. Maya stood frozen, pressed against the wall. The house that had always been a tomb of silence was now filled with the sound of a billionaire's genuine laughter. And in that moment, She realized the truth. The silent house and the cold man at its center had been just as lost as she was. The next morning, Maya returned to the mansion, still reeling from the unbelievable sight of Jacob on the floor, laughing with her son. When she found him standing by the window, coffee in hand, he simply nodded. It was a small, almost imperceptible gesture, but it wasn't cold. It was present. As the days turned into weeks, small changes began to accumulate. Jacob's footsteps were heard more often. He would pause at the nursery door when the boys were napping, or stand in the kitchen doorway while Maya prepared bottles. His expression remained unreadable, but the distance between them began to close. He never fired her, never scolded her. He just watched, his silence no longer a barrier but a curious observation. One night, the twins were crying with teething pain. Maya, exhausted and disheveled, went to the kitchen for milk, only to find Jacob there. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice thick with fatigue. "I know they're noisy." He held up a hand, cutting her off gently. "You don't have to explain." His voice was calm, almost quiet. After a long moment of shared silence, he asked, "How long has it been since their father?" Maya's voice cracked as she told him about Daniel. Jacob didn't offer empty platitudes. He simply nodded, a deep understanding in his eyes. He then shared a truth of his own. "I was engaged once. She said I wasn't built for love." Maya saw the buried pain in his eyes and understood. Maybe Jacob Lane wasn't cold. Maybe he was just broken. They shared the silence, now not tense, but almost comfortable. But peace is a fragile thing. Whispers had already started among the staff. The billionaire who hated children now had 2 toddlers roaming his halls. And then Claire arrived, Jacob's ex-fiancée, a vision in silk and diamonds, glided into the mansion like a storm gathering on the horizon. When she found Maya in the pantry, her smile was sweet, but her eyes were sharp. "So," Clara said, her voice like honey poison, "you're the one they've been whispering about. Jacob's charity project. A maid with baggage." Her gaze flicked toward the stroller. 2 pieces of baggage, actually. Maya's chest tightened. "You don't know me." "No," Clara purred, leaning closer. "But I know Jacob. He always breaks the toys he thinks he can fix. You're not even porcelain, dear. You're just temporary." The words were a bitter knife twisting in the wound of Maya's insecurity. The storm broke later that week when an heirloom pocket watch disappeared from Jacob's study. There was no sign of forced entry. It was simply gone. And just as Clara had planned, the whispers began. Things only started disappearing after boys came. One staff member muttered. Maybe she needed extra money, another speculated. Mr. Harris, the estate manager, pulled Maya aside. He couldn't meet her eyes. "Given the situation, Maya, it's best if you take some time away." Maya felt the floor vanish. Her locker had been ransacked, a picture of Daniel torn. She had no defense against a hurricane of suspicion. That night, she packed slowly, her hands shaking, her heart bleeding with every fold of clothing. She left a note on the refrigerator, her handwriting neat, her heart broken. "I didn't take it, but I understand why no one believes me." Then she walked out into the night, her boys in her arms, without a single goodbye. When Jacob returned, the silence of his house hit him like a physical blow. The missing giggles, the toys, the chaos. It was all gone. He found her note and read it over and over, the simple words cutting deeper than any business loss. For the first time, the silence of Lane Mansion was not peaceful. It was a gaping, empty wound. The next morning, Jacob's voice was sharper than it had been in years. "Find the watch," he ordered Mr. Harris. Hours later, the estate manager returned with the cold metal in his hand. "It slipped under the floor panel in the piano room," Harris explained. "One of the children must have dropped it." Jacob's stomach turned. There had been no theft, no betrayal, only the innocent mischief of a child. And he had let the one person who had brought life to his hollow house be cast out. He didn't wait. He drove to Oakwood Apartments, his heart a frantic drumbeat against his ribs. When Maya opened the door, she looked exhausted. Noah was feverish, and Eli clutched a small toy truck. Jacob held out the silver watch, the metal cold and heavy. It was never gone. The children dropped it. But Maya shook her head, her voice quiet and firm. That's not what hurts, Mr. Lane. What hurts is that you believed I could do it. He had no defense. She was right. He had let doubt creep in, and it was enough to shatter the fragile trust between them. He stepped inside anyway, dropping to the floor beside the boys. Noah whimpered, and without a word, Jacob took a bottle of cool water from his coat and held it to the boy's lips. The fever eased, and he stayed there, his expensive suit forgotten, his presence a quiet, solid anchor in her small apartment. When the boys finally fell asleep, Maya returned to find him still on the floor, the watch in his palm. You could have just called, she said. I did, he admitted, his eyes lifting to hers, filled with a raw, unpolished regret. You didn't answer. I didn't want to hear excuses. I don't have excuses, he said, the words heavy and real. Just this truth. The house doesn't feel alive without you and the boys. It feels empty, and I don't want to live in empty anymore. Maya said nothing, turning away to busy her hands. But in her chest, a piece of something broken began to knit itself back together. The following week, Jacob returned with a long tube of rolled-up papers. He unrolled them on her small table, revealing blueprints. I want to build a nursery wing, he said without ceremony. Not just for your boys, but for any child of anyone who works in my house. I can't undo what I let happen, but I can change the house. I can make it a place where laughter is allowed. Maya stared at the plans, her hands shaking. Help me design it, he said, his eyes steady. With a pen, she drew a small corner with a moon painted on the ceiling. Eli loves the moon, she explained. Jacob smiled, a true, genuine smile. Then he'll have one, with glow-in-the-dark stars, too. Their hands brushed, and for a moment, neither of them pulled away. Months later, the wing was finished. It was a space of soft colors, toys, and a ceiling dotted with glowing stars, a place that was not sterile or cold, but alive. On the day of the small celebration, the mansion filled with the sounds of laughter and the happy squeals of children. Jacob stood near the doorway, watching, no longer an outsider in his own home. He turned to Maya, his voice steady and gentle. You didn't just clean my house, Maya, he said. You reminded it how to live. You reminded me how to live. Later that night, as she washed bottles in the kitchen, Jacob found her. He set 2 mugs of tea on the counter. For a long time, they said nothing. Then quietly he spoke. You don't have to go. Not tonight. Not anymore. Maya's hand stilled in the sink. Slowly, she reached out and placed her hand on his. There were no more words, just a choice. And for the first time in years, Jacob Lane didn't feel hollow. He felt home.